Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, kids of all ages. I'd like to welcome you to this session of Speaker's Corner. By way of introduction, my name is Gabor Zinner. I'm a local lawyer, the founder of Speaker's Corner, and the recently self-proclaimed Grand Mufti of Tompkin Park. That's just a joke. Who's here for the first time? Can you show me by a show of hands who's here for the first time? Okay, great. Well, then I feel constrained to repeat a bit of an introduction that I offer all the time as to what Speaker's Corner is about. And fundamentally, it's intended to be a fresh air forum to offer Calgarians an opportunity to exchange ideas, debate topical issues, and basically participate in communal life, so to speak. And we try to deliver speakers and topics of interest on a weekly basis on Sundays from May to October. And we try to emulate the well-established democratic tradition practiced principally at Hyde Park in London, England, where people can just get up on a soapbox and basically rant and rave if they choose to. And it's participatory democracy at its crudest and its best. So we're trying to deliver that experience to Calgarians. We've had some, well, this is our third year. We've had some great debates during the past 2 years. On one occasion we had the leaders of two political parties debate right here on the XL pipeline, should it go or shouldn't it. We've had debates on prostitution, abortions, all manner of issues. Today we have a very serious topic for discussion, and it really and truly is about life and death. Life and death of 106 people who are, now I'm not clear, and our speakers are going to clarify. They've either been sentenced to death or about to be sentenced to death, including the former leader of Egypt, Mohamed Morsi. We have two distinguished speakers who have generously offered to give of their time and their creativity. And fundamentally, the topic heading is simply this: Egypt's crisis, 106 may be sentenced to death, including Morsi, atrocity or justice. I'm going to ask Dr. Leah Bailey to introduce the speakers, unless you'd sooner not, in which case I will, but she will give a bit of a background on each speaker and who will be speaking to which side. Leah?
Thank you everyone again for coming today. I know it's a beautiful day and a lot of people would rather be at the Lilac Festival, so hopefully some of them will make their way here as well. Speaking first is Dr. Rafe Osama. He obtained his PhD in biochemistry from the University of Calgary, his master's degree from New York University, and another master's degree from Cairo University. He is a fellow of the International Institute of Education, New York, USA, a member of and co-founder of the Egyptian-Canadian Coalition for Democracy, otherwise known as ECCD, and the former president of the Egyptian Student Association of Calgary. And I'd like you to help me welcome Osama.
Sorry, just people should know that all of our sessions are videographed and they're posted on YouTube and our website. And I mentioned this because if there are any privacy issues, then perhaps you should retreat to the background, because I've asked our beloved videographer, Mohammed Hassanin, to pan the audience to give it more visual interest. So there you have it. If you have any privacy concerns, let us know. Sir?
So I'd like to start by thanking Mr. Gabor and Dr. Aliyah for the kind invitation and for putting this all together. And I'd like to thank you as well for being here and showing your interest in the democratic transition that's happening, or the crisis in Egypt right now. So the topic of today that you may have seen on the press release is talking about the sentence of 106 people in one single trial in Egypt including the President Mohammed Morsi. And I personally feel humbled and proud as well to stand here in defense of Dr. Imad Shaheen, a professor of political sciences at American University in Cairo, who is sentenced to death, but he is now in exile at the United States and acting as a visiting professor at Georgetown University. I also feel proud to be in defense of Sundus Asim, a young woman who is currently a graduate student at the Oxford University at UK, who was sentenced to death as well. Who was sentenced to death as well in this trial. I'm also feeling proud to be in defense of President Mohammed Morsi, the professor of engineering, the son of a farmer, the first ever democratically elected president in the history of our nation, Egypt. Those people were sentenced to death in a single trial, more than 100 individuals. I would like also to congratulate Muhammad Sultan, an Egyptian American, who was pushed to the day after 89 days of hunger strike in his cell in Egypt. 49 days hunger strike in Egypt, who was pushed today to give up his Egyptian citizenship so the US government can take him to the States. And he today arrived at Virginia. And he is today free after 489 days of struggle. I would like also to be in defense of Muhammad Fahmy, an Egyptian Canadian, who was forced to give away his Egyptian citizen to be out of jail in Egypt in a trial known as Al Jazeera trial. So to understand in which context that this sentence was given, along with other hundreds of these sentences, including one of them is more than 500 people were charged or were given this sentence in one single trial, in one single session that lasts 20 minutes. And they were accused for killing one single police officer. Imagine one judge is able to verify the involvement of 500 protesters in killing of a single police officer in only 20-minute session, and giving them in one single trial, giving them this sentence. However, it took this same judiciary system and similar judges in Egypt, it took them 4 years to find that Mr. Mubarak, the former dictator who ruled the country for 30 years and who was accused of killing protesters at the beginning of the January 25th revolution, and he was accused of hundreds of corruption trials. That same system find that Mr. Mubarak is not charged. He cleared him out of all charges. And Mubarak is back home now, and all of his fellows, all of his regime. So to understand the context of that, you have to think of what's happening in Egypt right now. It is a revolution versus a counter-revolution. So the revolution is, and for the irony that both the revolution and the counter-revolution were born at the same time. The revolution most successful product was an elected president. For the first time in the history of our country, we had an elected president for a single year, Mr. Morsi. And an elected parliament. We had for the first time fairly elected parliament. And
many parties, many political parties were formed after that revolution. These are the products of revolution. And the freedom of speech, many of the media outlets were formed. So, at the other side of the counter-revolution, the ultimate success of this counter-revolution was a military coup that was planned after protests that claimed the president to call for early elections, and then the generals claimed power, and now one of them, General Assisi, is the president of Egypt with 94 or 95% of votes, back to Mubarak's numbers. We only used to hear these numbers during the generals. Nasser was the first general to rule Egypt at 1950s, and then Sadat, and then Mubarak. Every one of them usually get the numbers of 95% or even 99.9% of people voting to him. Of course, fabricated, of course, fraud. But the only one who was unlikely to be elected as a president, because he's a son of farmer, he's not one of the tribe of the military generals. He's a son of farmer. He's a university professor. He is a political leader. He is a parliament. He was a parliament member. And he was elected for 52%, around 52% only of the votes. So for this reason, the military generals were convinced that this man should not be a president because he didn't get the 99.9%. And now he is sentenced to death. So, as I just said, the products of revolution versus the products of the counter-revolution, as we can see now, many political parties, including the biggest and the largest political party in Egypt, the Freedom and Justice Party of the Muslim Brotherhood, were dissolved. The 6th April movement was dissolved. The liberal and the leftist youth movements that were participating or that led the January 25th revolution are now dissolved or even labeled as terrorist organizations. And here's a very smart techniques that the dictators use. What do they use? They use the ready-made propaganda. You want to control your people? You want to control your people and do whatever you want with them, with the whole international community staying silent and even supporting you, just to claim that you are fighting terrorism. So, just over one night, which was the night of the military coup, the military leaders had that slogan in the Egyptian television. After shutting off all other media channels that were supportive of the President Morsi, they put that slogan which says, Egypt is fighting terrorism. Here you go. I am fighting terrorism, leave me alone. Or give me some help, give me some Apaches, give me some F-16s, because I'm fighting terrorism. This is what a smart dictator do. But what a stupid dictator can do is what's happening right now. Because Sisi, General Sisi, who is now acting as a president, he is not as smart as General Mubarak was. General Mubarak was smart enough to rule Egypt and produce stability for 30 years. Why? Because Mubarak left some margin for the opposition, left a margin for the freedom of speech, because Mubarak was very smart not to interfere with the civil judiciary system. Whenever he wanted to punish the opposition or take an action against them, he used the military judiciary system. But Sisi, because he came to power after a military coup, and he has a stigma from that word, he wants to stay aside from it, he tried to avoid using the military system. Rather, he used the civilian judiciary system as his heavy hand or as a death machine to sentence deaths and sentence killing for his opposition people. So, what's the situation now in Egypt? How does it look like? In Egypt, Simply, for those of you who have never been there, we can't have such debate in Egypt. I swear. And ask everyone, including my friend Gamal, he's representing the other side. We can't have such a debate in Egypt right now. We can't. Simply, we can't. We will be taken all to jail. But if we have someone from the other side who want to be there, of course. So, it is silence like this now. More than 40,000 political prisoners, including those who supported General Assisi at the beginning because they were in the opposition of Mr. Morsi. The 6 April youth movement leaders, Ahmed Maher, he's now in jail. And I'm proud now to call for the freedom and justice for Ahmed Maher. He's one of the leaders of the 25th revolution. His friend Muhammad Adil, he's now in jail. Dr. Muhammad al-Baradei, one of the opposition leaders that helped in ousting Muhammad Morsi and helped in the coup, he's now silenced forever. He's now in his exile in Vienna. He can't stay in Egypt because he refused the Rabaa massacre. He refused the killing of more than 5,000 people in Rabaa Square, 5,000 protesters. So he's now silenced, even if he was supportive of Mr. al-Sisi at the beginning. So it's now complete silence. It's now pure dictatorship, pure military rule. Despite that, people are still going to their streets. People are still going with bare chests to the streets claiming their rights. Just last week, Islam Atitu, a student of the School of Medicine at Cairo University, was taken from his exam room, and a few hours ago was found in the desert dead. Read the reports of the human rights groups or the media reports about the sexual assault for prisoners, including men, women, children. They are all sexually assaulted. We have people now are dying in prison, in their cells, and they were prevented from their medicine. In an intended killing, slow and blood-cold killing, including Professor Dr. Tariq Al-Ghandour. He was a professor at the medical school at Ain Shams University and one of the opposition leader. He was found dead in his cell because he was prevented from his liver medicine for weeks. Another man, he is a doctor of pharmacology, Dr. Farid Ismail. He was also a former member of the parliament who was found dead in his cell because he was simply prevented from his medicine as well. Muhammad al-Falahki, he's another member of the parliament, was found dead in his cell. And we still asking, is this justice or not? The killing more than 100, sentencing more than 100 people with this death machine, is this justice or not? It's as simple as we can ask if what Hitler did to the Jewish people was justice or not. Sentencing more than 100 people in a single trial to death is justice or not. And we have people sometimes arguing about the number of those who were killed in the streets or those who were sentenced to death. It looks like to them, if you argue that the number is lower, if you found someone or accuse someone of killing 100 people and he says, no, I'm innocent, I just killed 10 people. So you'll give him a hug and say, go away, you're a good boy. It's a crime. We believe, and I do believe, that killing every single soul is equal. Killing a single soul is equal killing the whole humanity, because you've taken the life of a human being without putting him in a fair and transparent trial.
Hell yeah.
Read what the Amnesty says. Read what the Human Rights Organization says about those trials. It's unfair, injustice. Even the defendants are not given the right to defend themselves. Sometimes the judge put the lawyer on the jail with his defendants if he didn't like him. And we're still asking about the transparency and independency of the judiciary system of Egypt? No way. I just can give you a very short summary of how it is about that system in Egypt. First of all, it looks like a tribe of people. You'll find parents with their sons, with their cousins, with their relatives, are all acting and working as judges. I am, as a son of farmer, I can't get into the judiciary system. Even if I have full marks, even I have full grades, I can't get into there because I don't have relatives there. So you have to have relatives to be one of them. And just few weeks ago or few days ago, the Minister of Justice in Egypt says in a TV, in one of the Egyptian TVs that's backing General Assisi now, he says that a son of a garbage man, or the garbage picking man, can't be a judge, or shouldn't dream to be a judge, because he is from a low-ranking family. His father doing a low-ranking job, and he can't be honored enough to be a judge. And when all people refused that, and the social media were just taking that virally and were protesting against it, General Assisi was pushed to push this man to resign, and he put another judge as a Minister of Justice, who just also said that in this country, we were saying this country means in Egypt, so this man, the current Minister of Justice now, is saying that we are in this country the masters, and whoever else are slaves. This has been said. Imagine the Minister of Justice saying that. So back to the revolution and the counter-revolution story. So the revolution had its ups and downs. The revolution was able to run elections, was able to form parties, political parties, were able to give chances for the freedom of speech and lots of media channels. And what did the counter-revolution done? It was able to captivate and imprison an elected president, was able to dissolve elected parliament, was able to put tens of thousands of people in jails, was able to kill hundreds and thousands of young men and women in the streets. And now it is what it is. It is the course of the counter-revolution now. But the revolution is coming back. The revolution is still alive. It's still alive in our spirits. It's still alive in our minds. It's still alive in our dreams. That's why, I will be honest with you. I came here and I know, no matter what I do here, and no matter what you guys think of my performance here, I came here and I know that I want to be successful. Yes, I want to be successful because I cannot stop the death of those innocent people at the moment. And you also cannot. We are all non-successful in that. But I came here to just record my position on that, and just to record to my young children and to the children of the 7 people who were sentenced to death and who were executed 2 weeks ago. I'm recording this video to their children. I was against the mass death killing, the mass death sentences, and I was against the execution of your parents. And I'm here at this part of the world, at this faraway place, telling those people that your parents were heroes. Your parents were not only innocent, but your parents were heroes. Your parents went to jail only for their opinion. Your parents went to jail and were executed for crimes they did not commit. They were executed for crimes and in trials that all human rights organizations described as unfair and unjust. Your parents were executed for just simply saying their opinions. Your parents were executed for crimes that they did not commit. Of course, some of these crimes even happened after those people were in jail. A father of one of those young men, he was thinking that his son is missing somewhere. And he spent months searching for his son everywhere. And he was surprised to find that his son is in jail. And later on, he was surprised that his son is sentenced to death in an incident, in a supposedly crime that happened after his son was in jail for 3 months. I'll tell you what. And all the world know that. And you can search it for yourself on the internet. The same trial we're talking about today, it's one of 100 trials, unfair and unjust. But in this trial specifically, which included President Mohammed Morsi, in this trial, 2 dead men were sentenced to death for a crime that happened after their death. Go search it. Another 2 people at the same trial were sentenced to death, even though they are in the Israeli prison since 1996. Since 1996, they are in the prison. They didn't even witness the Egyptian Revolution. They didn't even witness the June 30 uprising or the military coup in July 3rd. They didn't even witness any of that, and they were sentenced to death. So, I don't feel that we are doing something today for those people. I don't feel that we are applying justice, but I feel that raising awareness and using every single moment and every possible opportunity to talk about those people, to talk about the injustice in my country, and to talk about the lost hopes, and to talk about the nightmare that many of my personal friends I know, many of them since July 3rd, 2013, they've never been back to their houses and their homes. They cannot. Because the police check their houses every few days at midnight and they break their doors, try in searching for them, only because they were political activists. I personally know my friend, I still remember my friend Atif Abdul Latif. I still remember that name because he was my friend and my neighbor, and he was killed on Rabaa Square with hundreds and thousands of other people whom I know. They have never ever in their life, committed any act of violence. They have never ever in their life hold a gun like me. I've never ever held a gun in my hand or used it. I know those people. We went together to the school. We were talking together. We were chatting together on the Facebook. I know them. I know how they think. I know how they live. And I know that he was killed in the middle of the street. He was not killed in the Turapura Mountains, or he even was not killed in Sinai Mountains. He was killed in a square in the middle of the capital of Egypt, only for protesting for his right. And we're still arguing whether this is justice or not. Whether the international community will support justice and democratic transition in Egypt or not, I simply do not believe so. Because superpowers only support stability in our region, in the Middle East. They do not support democracy. They do not support freedom of speech. Only they do support stability. And I'm telling them that this, what's happening now, dictatorship, tyranny, brutality, would never ever produce stability. It's only democracy that produces stability. The Egyptian revolution is non-violent revolution. It started as so. And you hear the news now from Syria. And you hear the news from Libya. And do you know what's the difference between violence and non-violence? Do not let anyone deceive you that what's happening in Egypt is violence. Yes, there are some terrorist groups, I know. In Sinai region, there are some terrorist groups. But that's in the border. And that should be dealt with by the military. Not in Cairo. Not in cities. Not in civil places. This group, ISIS, there, was not brought to justice. No action were taken against it in Egypt. Actions were taken against the 6 April youth movement. Actions were taken against the Muslim Brotherhood movement. Actions were taken against the Freedom and Justice Party. Actions were taken against the Istiqlal Party. Actions were taken against the Ahmed Maher and Muhammad Adil. And were taken against all the political opposition, not those terrorists. So do not let anyone deceive you. And I do not have to talk a lot to provide evidences about the kangaroo nature of the judiciary system in Egypt. You just can read the headlines, which is out there in the internet. Or just read the headlines or the content of the human rights reports about Egypt now. So now, just to sum up, the justice system in Egypt, it's unfair and unjust to call it the justice system anymore. It's the injustice system. We have groups of judges who are only acting for their personal benefits, for their sons' jobs, to secure jobs for their male sons and for their relatives. They are only acting to get promotions. Who were specially selected to issue these sentences. It's not up to justice. It's not up to the judge. It's not up to the court. I know that and I believe that. It's not up to the judge or not up to the court. It's only up to the generals who issue these sentences. We are in the wrong direction if you're talking about the judiciary system. If you're talking about judges, we are in the wrong directions. It's only the generals who issues these and only get read by the judges. We have a very famous name for that in Egypt. It's the telephone trials or the telephone court. So the judge gets into the courtroom and he waits for a telephone call. And if the telephone call from the general been late, he suspend the session for a while and go wait for the telephone call. And when he get the telephone call, he got the answer. He got the sentence. He do it right away. I would also mention that there were a group of judges who were independent. And they said that what happened in July 3rd is a military coup against the Constitution because they consider themselves as guardian of the Constitution. So they said this is a pure military coup and they issued a statement for that. Those judges now are either in exile or they lost their jobs forever or been to jail. One of our honorable judges, he's 7 years old and he was the leader of the judge independence movement by the name of Mahmoud Khidr. This man, Mahmoud Khudair, this man is 7 years old and he's in jail since the military coup in 2013, July 2013. And the reason is, the accusation is that he has beaten a young man to death in Tahrir Square, believe it or not. And I'll let you with that. 4 girls by the name of Yusra, Minna, Abrar, and Heba, they were sentenced to 10 years in prison for having a balloon for having a balloon that has that sign, Rab'a sign, the sign for the square where hundreds of people were massacred when they protesting against this military coup. Thank you. Thanks for your attention. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. Our next speaker is Dr. Salim, who obtained his PhD in political science from the University of Calgary in 2011. He currently is the assistant professor in political science in Port Said University in Egypt and the British University of Egypt. He is serving as the coordinator of academic activities for the International Association of Middle East Studies. Dr. Salim's research interests are in the field of democratization, transitional regimes, political and development, politics, and development, and international relations in the Middle East. He has published 2 books and has written numerous articles on Egypt in the Middle East politics.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for allowing me to come here and speak on this event. Actually, that's my, is it now on? That's my second time to speak in Speaker's Corner. Okay, the first was in August 2013. So it was good to reunion even with one of my old friends, Osama. We had come to know each other 5 or 6 years ago, so it was a good chance to reunion again. Concerning the topic of this event, over 100 people sentenced to death in Egypt, atrocity or justice. One of the first things I do in my classes when I start the semester is to ask my students to develop what I call critical thinking, which means that they should never take any piece of information as given, as granted. In fact, they should research, they should investigate. They should investigate and they should try hard to get the truth. Because from what I believe, more than 60 or 70% of what our media produce is nothing but propaganda, misinformation, manipulation of facts, and deception. To start with, the title of this event is not true. It's not true, my friends, that there are death sentences against more than 100 people in Egypt, including President Mohamed Morsi. And in fact, I let the organizer aware of this mistake. But unfortunately, she told me that my friend Osama insisted to keep the title as it is. I told her, that's fine, but I am putting this very clear that this is not true. Simply because, my friends, there are no death sentences being issued against any of those people yet. What happened is that the court, or the first degree court in Egypt, they sent those people to the mufti of the state. That's the highest religious authority in the state, for consultation concerning their religious status and concerning whether they should be given a death sentence or not. That's a consultative opinion by the mufti, which means that it's not binding to the court. And the mufti has not yet issued his opinion. The court has not yet issued its verdict. The court should convene, I think, in 2 to 3 days, either to do one of 3 things. Either to postpone the trial in case that the mufti will not get back to the court on due time, or to confirm the death sentence, or to give a totally different sentence. Either a present sentence or any different one. So by the end of the day, I am very concerned, I am very surprised when I hear in the media that there are death sentences being issued. That's not true, unfortunately. And this is one of the sources of misinformation, one of the sources of propaganda, unfortunately, that has been used by so many people. And the media has been able to circulate this propaganda. And unfortunately, many people, particularly outside the Middle East, did believe in this sort of propaganda. I am not defending or attacking the death sentence. I am not concerned with the final verdict, because by the end of the day, there is a judicial process. There is a system of judiciary which we all respect, number one. Number two, which is more important, even if the court will give a death sentence to President Morsi and his followers, that does not mean that it's a final verdict. And unfortunately, this is the type of information that you don't get in the media. You don't listen to in the media. Because in the Egyptian judicial process, there are three layers. There are three layers which are designed in order to make sure that any trial is fair, just, and to the maximum benefit of those who are tried. So in case there is a death sentence in the first layer or in the first trial, all the people have the right to appeal that death sentence in front of the Court of Cessation. The Court of Cessation will decide to take the whole trial into a totally different court. So a whole bunch of judges, a totally new bunches of judges, will have to investigate the whole trial from zero, from A to Z. That's the second layer. Even if in the second layer the court will confirm the death sentence, they still have a third chance to appeal this sentence in front of the Court of Cessation as the final level of authority in that respect. So my friends, it's not a matter of an easy process. There is a judicial process which gives people the highest level of protection, which makes sure that people, even though that there might be some politically oriented judges who could be on the stage, the system itself will not give any chance that a trial will be unfair. You have three processes of appealing. So never ever believe that there is a death sentence. And in order for a final verdict, to be confirmed, that could take up, you know how many? That could take up to 4 or 5 years. In order for a final verdict, a final ruling to be confirmed. So that's as far as the judicial process or the judicial system in Egypt is concerned. Unfortunately, I hoped that the title of the event could be changed in the last minute, but I was not successful with that. But I made it clear to the organizer that the first thing I will talk about is that this title and the wording of the title itself, unfortunately, does not give the truth. There is a sort of misinformation, and we need to make sure that this is clear. That's number one. Number two, and I am taking this to a higher level, the context itself, the context of the trial. Yes, there are some people who might get death sentences in Egypt. There might be some brotherhood members who might get death sentences in Egypt. I can understand. But did anyone try to ask herself or himself, what is that for? Like, what is the crime? What did they commit in Egypt? How many police officers were killed in Egypt over the last 2 years at the hands of this terrorist wave, which have been sweeping Egypt for the last 2 years? How many army officers were killed? How many civilians were killed as a result of this terrorist wave, which is unprecedented in the level or in the history of modern Egypt? Did anyone try to ask himself how many people were killed? More than 600 police officers were killed in attacks on police stations, in attacks on checkpoints, and on their homes. More than 800 army officers and soldiers were killed, not only in Sinai, believe it or not, but also in major urban cities, in major urban centers. Civilians were killed. Police stations are stormed. Electricity stations are attacked. Metro stations are attacked. Universities are destroyed. Why? Because Egyptians on June 30 decided that it's enough with President Morsi. Yes, we elected him in the first democratic elections in Egypt, but after 1 year, it became clear that we are reproducing the authoritarian structure of the Mubarak regime, but in a new form. Unfortunately, in a religious, fanatic, extremist form. So now authoritarianism is combined with a religious flavor. So we decided, yes, we elected him, but after 1 year, we decided as well that enough with President Morsi. And we asked him for early presidential elections. In fact, everyone in Egypt, including the military, including the liberal forces, including those forces who ignited the first revolution, we were all on the same track. We were all on the same demand. Please, let's go for presidential elections, early presidential elections, because there was a profound crisis in society. There was a high level of polarization between the two camps, between the followers of the president, between the brotherhood and the followers of the president on one side, and the majority of Egyptians. So we decided to proceed with the democratic path by calling for early elections. Do you know what was the response of the president? Do you know what was the response? I will stay in power for 4 years. I will protect my position no matter what people would want to do, and I will protect my position with blood. Do you know what does that mean? Do you know what does that mean? It means another Syrian civil war, another civil war like the one we are having right now in Syria, in Yemen, in Libya, and in many places in the Middle East. This is the time when we decided, no, you can't take it in that direction. You can't take us hostage because you want to continue your term. No. So we decided to end this process, and we asked the military to intervene because it was the only force capable of ending this potential bloodshed in Egypt. Two camps sitting in two different places in the capital with hundreds of thousands on both camps, threatening each other, carrying weapons, carrying sticks, and threatening to attack each other in the streets of Cairo and in the streets of major urban cities. Do you know how could this end up to? A bloodshed. So yes, the military intervened, yes. The defense minister intervened, yes, but that was the demand of millions of Egyptians who were frightened by the first year of Mohammed Morsi in power, who were frightened by the sectarian discourse that was pursued by President Morsi and his group in power, who was frightened by the polarization that Egyptians experienced during this 1 year in power. This was the first time that Egyptians were divided to that extent. We reached a point whereby our differences were handled by killing each other, by accusing each other of being traitors, by being not Egyptians, by being not nationalist enough. So that was the context. Unfortunately, when we decided to end this experience, when we decided to end this democratically elected experience, which ended up with another form of authoritarian power structure, unfortunately, the Muslim Brotherhood decided that no, that's not the end of the story. Either we rule the country, either we continue in office, or we will turn your life into hell. Either we control the system, no matter what is the popular position, no matter what the millions of Egyptians would like to have, or we kill you in the streets. So an unprecedented wave of terrorism sparked out in all cities of Egypt since July 2013 until that moment. Universities were destroyed. Cairo University, the oldest university in the Middle East, were destroyed at the hands of Brotherhood followers. Why? I don't know. If you have a problem with President Sisi, if you have a problem with the regime itself, so why are you attacking people in their universities? Why you are attacking students? Why you are attacking labs? Why are you attacking professors? Why are you attacking metro stations? Every single target in Egypt has become, literally speaking, a target for these terrorist activities under the name of resisting the coup or resisting the military generals. I can totally understand your political position, and you have all the right either to accept President Sisi or to reject, but you don't have the right to turn our life or to turn our daily life into hell, to turn it into hell. My wife, who is making a master's degree in economics in Cairo University, she was about to be killed last year at the hands of Brotherhood students who wanted to storm the Faculty of Economics and Political Science and destroy the exam room and attacking students inside the room. And she was about to have a heart attack because of this. So why are you doing this? If you have any problem with the regime, that's fine. But that does not justify carrying arms and terrorizing 90 million Egyptians because of your victimization at the hand of the regime. That's not the way you should conduct your grievances, or you should defend your grievances. We all had problems with successive Egyptian regimes, my friends. We all stood against Mubarak. We all stood against the first military council who followed Mubarak. None of the Egyptian political forces were willing to take the confrontation with the regime into the streets by terrorizing Egyptians or terrorizing the people in the streets because they have a problem with the system or because they have a problem with the regime. Mubarak stood in power for more than 30 years, but I never heard of any group that destroyed Egyptian universities or destroyed metro stations because they had an issue with Mubarak. That's not the place where you could express your grievances. Unfortunately, that's the situation right now in Egypt. One last point, and I need to make this clear. We are saying that President Morsi and his followers are innocent, and they did not commit the crimes they are facing right now. How did we know that? How did we know that? Are we putting ourselves as the judges, the lawyers? Are we putting ourselves as those who are having the authority to decide who's innocent and who's not, who's guilty and who is not? We didn't know. We didn't see the charges. These charges will be released to the media once a verdict is issued by the court. And every one of us will come to know what is the exact charges against those people. I am not concerned that one of the people or some of the people are university professors. My friends, being a university professor does not put you above the law. Bin Laden himself was a well-educated Saudi person. He was from the royal family. with the highest level of education. Does that give him immunity? Does that give him protection in front of the law? No. That has nothing to do with his occupation. I am a university professor, but in case there is a criminal charge against me, I am a citizen by the end of the day, similar to any citizen in this state. So we don't know the charges against those people, so we can't put ourselves into the shoe of a judge, into the position of a judge and a lawyer, as I mentioned. More importantly, there are no death sentences being issued to make things clear, and it can take up to 4 or 5 years, as I mentioned, in order to reach a final verdict. Of course, there are lots of things which we can talk about, but I want to make my presentation focused, precise as much as I can, and I can leave the rest to the discussion time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The first speaker will have an opportunity to rebut if he chooses to, but he has to confine himself to 5 minutes or less. Do you have anything to say? Go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to thank Dr. Gamal for a nice speech, and I actually appreciate the fact that he took some time to explain the judiciary system in Egypt and the judiciary process. And there are always nice words written on papers. Ink doesn't cost much, and that's written. In Egypt, we didn't invent that judiciary system. We took it as a copy and paste from the French system. So it is there. You have all layers of stuff, and you have all reels of trials. But again, as I just said, it is the general phone call which decide what is the verdict is. End of story. So regarding that the sentences are not issued yet, from Dr. Gamal's speech himself, it is a major part of the process that the judge decide to give death sentences, in this case the general, and then send it to a mufti, which is a religious position, and his position, his opinion is only not obligatory, and it's only for consultation, and the judge can go on. President Morsi has another trial on this on the coming June 2nd for in this specific case, and as a matter of fact, death sentences or wherever the trials in Egypt used to take so long time, and this is what we have seen with the Mubarak regime people. This is what we have seen with Mubarak himself. It took 4 years of trials and defenses and lots of work to issue the final verdict. But when it comes to supporters of President Morsi, it takes only few days. It takes sometimes only few weeks. The executions that happened 2 weeks ago for 7 people in a trial known as Arab Sharkas. In this case, the execution takes only few months. In few months, those young men, including a 19-years-old boy, were sentenced to this in only few months, about 5 to 7 months. And one of them was actually at 18 years old when he was arrested. So it doesn't take much when it comes to supporters of President Morsi. Yes, it takes much in the other side. So this also shows how transparent and fair this system. So about what happened in 2013, Dr. Gamal said that we all elected Mohammed Morsi, or we elected Mohammed Morsi. This is the exact phrases he said. We elected Mohammed Morsi, and we decided to say to him enough after 1 year. So if we elected Mohammed Morsi, if you elected Mohammed Morsi, you elected him for 4 years. It's a democratic process. And it's not part of a democratic process to call the Minister of Defense to remove an elected president. It's not a democratic process. And we've seen it's not producing democratic process. It's producing death sentences. It's producing killing in the streets. It's producing tens of thousands in prisons. This is what it's producing. It is not a political process. There is no even politics in Egypt right now. There is no parties. There is no parliament. General Sisi is ruling the country for 2 years now. No parliament. No opposition. Nothing. Only him. It's one-man show. So it didn't end up with a democratic process, right? So we are in the wrong path. We have to reclaim our revolution. It is not up to the Brotherhood. If the Brotherhood decided to reconciliate with the military generals, if the Brotherhood decided to accept Mr. Al-Sisi or General Al-Sisi as a president, we do not. The rest of Egyptians do not. We need the values that we stood for in 2011. We need the freedom of speech. We need the media freedom. We need the journalism freedom. We need the political parties freedom. We need people be able to go back to their homes. We need being freed from the prison. So it didn't end up with a democratic process at all. And sorry? Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I know he will come in. Yeah, he will come in. Yes, okay. So yeah, I'll just use my 2 more minutes. So Dr. Gamal also said that during the year of Morsi, the country was polarized. How is it right now? Is it polarized or not? Honestly, it is, right? Much more polarized. Even during Morsi, you had the right as an opponent for Morsi to go to the streets and protest. You don't have that now. Tahrir Square now is blocked and sieged by barricades, by tanks, by soldiers. You are not allowed to go there. Even they built 2 gates, 2 huge steel gates. You can't get into that square. So even opposition lost their privilege. No freedom of speech. It's not the country we're looking for, right? It's not what we have hoped for in the military, in the uprising at 2011. Yeah, I'll leave it with that.
Thank you. You want to as well? Okay, but you're responding only to what he said just now, and will 2 to 3 minutes suffice? That you got it. Well, I said 2 to 3.
2 or 3? He took 5. Okay, thank you. Okay, just for the sake of time, I will try to be very focused, okay, just to illustrate a couple of things. First, no, the trial of President Morsi has not been taking place for the last 2 or 3 months. That's not true, my friend. Unfortunately, I need to advise you that you should be verifying your information. This trial has started in 2013, during the period of Mohamed Morsi himself into power. So the current trial has started almost 2 years ago. So it's not true that it has been only for the last 2 to 3 years. So that's very important. Number 2, which is also another misinformation presented by my friend Osama, President Mubarak, or former President Mubarak, did not get a final verdict for his criminal charges. In fact, he got only a verdict in the second layer of the process, and now there is an appeal which has been presented by the general prosecutor to the Court of Cassation in order to appeal this verdict, and there is another layer or another process of trial which will take place for President Mubarak and for his close associates on charges related to the killing of people during the revolution. So I am afraid that President, or that my friend Osama, is continuing to give, misinformation and information which have nothing to do with reality. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3, my friend Osama said that we elected Morsi for 4 years. Yes, that's true. But in any democratic society, in any democratic system, early presidential elections is part of the system, is part of the democratic process. And this is a practice which is very common in all solid democracies. How many early elections that we witnessed here in Canada over the last 50 years? How many? Many early elections took place in Canada because of similar situations taking place in different contexts. Early elections is a common practice in the United States. It's a common practice in the UK. In all solid democracies, my friend, early elections is one of the tools that people will resort to whenever there is a crisis, whenever there is an immune crisis taking place between the regime and the opposition. So electing President Morsi for 4 years does not mean that he has an immunity for 4 years to do whatever he wants, and then we start asking or we start putting him accountable after the 4 years. No, that's not true. So I hope that he can correct some of his information about the democratic process, about the judicial process, and about all these related facts. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you both. So at this point in time, we open the floor to interveners for questions and comments, and we invite and encourage you to do so. Before we do, however, I'd like to acknowledge both of our speakers. They both, speakers always, including these two gentlemen, they take of their time. It takes time to prepare. It takes time to come here. They abandon their families while they're here. I think one of you has some family here, though. Okay, but it takes some courage and conviction to stand up and to speak your mind, and we appreciate it. And we acknowledge you and we honor you. And consistent with our custom, we give each of our speakers a certificate of appreciation. And to each of Dr. Rafai and Salim, we give you this certificate for dedicating time and effort by speaking at Speaker's Corner Calgary. Thanks to your contribution of ideas and energy, we are better able to inform, inspire, and entertain a more vibrant Calgary. So please accept this, gentlemen. It's not my first mistake. Okay. Any interveners? Any comments? Lady here. And I will have a few questions myself, which is a change. Please come up.
If anyone else would like to make a comment, could we get people to just line up over here? So if anyone else would like to have something to say, ask some questions, we'll just get you to line up over here by the speaker. And that way we know how many people there are and how long we can let people speak. Thank you.
Thank you. So first of all, being here and being able to partake in this debate, I feel very privileged that I live in a truly democratic country, a country that fosters the freedom of speech and freedom of expression. And unfortunately, that is not the case at all in Egypt right now. Ever since the military coup took place in Egypt in the end of June of 2013, and I'm not going to sit here and debate whether it was a military coup or not, because there is tremendous amount of evidence that supports it being a military coup. So ever since it took place at the end of June 2013, it has brought about a lot of misery to Egypt and the Egyptian people. There have been 6 innocent people that took their death sentences, or they've been executed by the Egyptian military right now, and that was very recent. And I have pictures right here of the 6 innocent Egyptians that have been executed. And hundreds of others are waiting for the same thing to pretty much happen to them. And according to the Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and other human rights activists and movements, there have been more than 40,000 innocent Egyptians, including more than 700 children under the ages of 15 years that have been sentenced and imprisoned right now after the military coup in Egypt. Furthermore, there are a lot of innocent Egyptians that are being killed in their own houses, in their own homes, in front of their families and children. What kind of justice is that? Is this not a military coup? Men, women, and children are being raped and sexually assaulted in Egyptian prisons. All of this to apparently eliminate the public protests. Is this justice? People, Egyptians with dual citizenships, are being forced to forfeit their Egyptian citizenship in order to be released from prison and deported back to their other country. For example, Mohammed Sultan, who is an American Egyptian and was just released yesterday and deported back to Egypt, back to America, sorry. And there's also Mohammed Fahmy, who was a Canadian Egyptian. What kind of justice is this? So, if it's being argued that there are no death sentences given in Egypt, if a government can do all these things, if they can kill thousands of innocent Egyptians, if they can imprison thousands of innocent Egyptians, what makes you think that they cannot put someone under the death sentence? What makes you think that they cannot execute an innocent person? So right now, with all these events happening in Egypt, I want to know the opinion of both our debaters. What do you think the future of Egypt holds with the rule of Sisi right now? And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thanks you for your comment, and concerning the question, the future of Egypt, okay? I can see that the future of Egypt depends on whether the state will be able to defeat terrorism or not, okay? Our main problem now in Egypt is with terrorism, okay? And that's the highest problem or the highest issue on the list of priorities for the average Egyptian citizen, for myself, for my friends, for my family, for the average Egyptian citizens. My friend, we all want a democratic Egypt. We all want a free Egypt. Make sure that this is a common demand for all Egyptians. But when it comes to the personal security and the personal safety of Egyptians, I don't think that nothing should take precedence when it comes to this issue. Our security now is endangered. Our personal safety is endangered. When I go to my university, when I go to my work, when I go to any place, I am not sure whether I would be able to come back to my home, either due to a road bomb or to one of the snipers who could shoot me in the street whenever there is a protest, whenever there is any explosion in a power station, in a metro station, in university. I know many of my university colleagues whose vehicles were burned by Brotherhood students on campus. Why? I don't know. I don't know. So we should put things into the right context. Yes, I can have some comments on President Sisi, which is acceptable. Nothing is perfect. No one is perfect. And yes, I elected President Sisi. I elected him in the last presidential elections. That does not mean that everything he is doing I approve. But I am putting my emphasis here on the larger context that should be clear to everyone, that when it comes to terrorism, nothing justifies terrorism. The fact that you were taken out of office, the fact that there is a military coup, call it what you want, call it a populist coup, call it a military coup, call it a revolution, call it an uprising, I don't care. What I care about is that you are turning the lives of 90 million Egyptians into misery because you were taken out of office. Nothing justifies terrorism. Thank you.
Yeah, is this from political science point of view or security point of view? Okay, so right, so
About his personal safety before taking about anything else. Thank you.
yeah, so I would like also to talk from my human point of view as well, and I would say the future of Egypt lies on the hands of those generation, our generation, which experience for the first time ever in their life free elections, freedom of speech, political activism. We've experienced that. And we should reclaim, or we are reclaiming actually that back. What we are experiencing now is part of the struggle, is part of the price that we should pay to get our freedom back, to get our revolution back, to get the everything to normal back. And I'd like to comment about what my friend Gamal said in the security problems that happening. First of all, if you look to the scale which do things happening that I condemn and I don't agree on, comparing this scale to what's happening in Syria or Libya is nothing, right? The second is, this is part of the leading of fear game. It's a leading of fear game. Hey, I'm the general. I'm the one who has the power. I am the one who has the security. Get me in power, or keep me in power, and I'll provide you security. Security or democracy, and you should choose. This is what Al-Sisi said. And you can't ignore that intelligence, they can play whatever dirty games they want. And I believe this is what's happening now in Egypt, even in that short scale or small scale. What's happening is mostly intelligence plan to get people led by fear, to tell people don't to go out to streets. Like my friend Gamal, he can't go out to street. Why? So let's just elect a general, and he stays there forever because he's providing us security. He's providing us food. So let's keep silent, because if you talk, you will be a threat to the state. You will be an enemy of the state. You will be the threat of the national security. You will be supporting terrorism. No, I should be able to say my opinion. And can I claim now for an early election for Sisi? Can we call him for early election after 2 years in power? Can anyone do it in the TV now, in the Egyptian TV? I don't think so. Yeah, I will let you comment. But remember that all opposition media channels are shut off. So whoever only goes to media now is selected by the regime. Yeah.
So yes, I would say yes, very loudly, yes. If there is a majority of Egyptians calling for early elections, I am sure that there will be an early elections, because President Sisi made it very clear. Quoting him, I will not wait until millions of Egyptians go to the streets and ask me to leave office. I will not allow this to happen. I will immediately resign if I see that the majority of Egyptians does not or do not approve my presidency. So he is very aware of that. He made it clear that there are two presidents who were removed from power at the hands of a popular revolution. And he made it clear that he is not an exemption. He is not an exception, I'm sorry. He's not an exception to that. So he made it very clear that yes, there could be early elections if people want this, if the majority of Egyptians want this. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, I'm sorry. We do have people who want to say something. Sir, you had something to say?
I would like to thank everybody who's coming here today, and I'm glad to be here in this position to state my opinion. I just wanted to mention that unfortunately, the game or the card that they always being played with dictators in our Middle East countries in general is always been no voice is raised above the voice of war against terror. And this is the selling ticket to the West to allow those dictators in the Middle East, including General Sisi, to kill, rape, and murder people with no excuses, with nothing, nobody to blame to or to held liable to. This is unacceptable, and it has to be stopped. Definitely has to be stopped. Not because I'm opposed to you or the way you rule the country, my country, and everybody else's country, means that you hold a gun in my hand because you're wearing a uniform, then you shoot me in the head and you're not liable. This is unacceptable, and it has to be stopped with peaceful procedures, through democratic elections, through true democratic elections, not by killing innocent people and under the name of a fake presidential election that took place with General Killer Sisi. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else who would like to say something? This gentleman here.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mohammed. First of all, I want to make a correction to my friend Osama. Mr. Sisi did not win by 90 or 95% in the last election, so-called election. He won by 98.4%, so we have to be clear on that. You know, don't want to put numbers out there. Put that aside. You know, I was thinking about this debate a little bit, and just hold on, no, I don't want to sit down. And I said, you know what? I want to learn something new. I want to learn some magic. So I went on some YouTube videos, and I kind of started, you know, looking at some videos to kind of see how people do magic. You know, it's so cool. You know, you go on these videos, and You see this guy, brings out the card and he disappears and he says, which number do you have? You say 5 and it's actually the 5 even though it's some other number. Or he takes some kind of an object and makes it disappear. So I thought it was pretty cool. So I'm gonna try it out and see how it goes. And that's pretty much what I did. So today, I'm gonna do a magic trick for you. We have a simple apple over here. I'm gonna put it right here. And of course, if you wanna do magic, you have to get a magic wand. You can't just do magic without just, words and stuff. So I went to the dollar store and I got a magic wand over here, which is basically a little paintbrush. And you have to learn some words and it takes some practice and stuff and eventually you'll get the magic going. So I want you to closely watch the apple, okay? So I can make it disappear. You guys can see in the back, right? Perfect, okay. Ready? Everything Egypto beautiful. Did the apple disappear? Yes. It disappeared. Okay. Well, you saw it. Why? You should be looking the other way. Actually, I told you to look at the apple. What I'm trying to say here, if it's so... Okay, I'm not really good at magic. I'm going to confess now. This is not magic that I did right now. And what I'm trying to say here is, if it's so easy to say that, something like this, like an apple, can disappear, my impression is Mr. Gamal could come up to us and say, okay, well, 120 people are dead, just make it disappear, done deal. So to him, it should be easy. He shouldn't be like me and, kind of try and hide it. No, it's very easy for him. He can just say 120 people basically are not sentenced to death, everything is good, no problem. General Sisi, if he sees people on the street, he's not going to wait for people to come out to basically protest against him, and he's going to leave. Not going to happen. Just do some magic, and there you go. President Sisi is going to disappear. This is precisely what the military dictatorship in Egypt is trying to promote. It's trying to give you something, and essentially you're supposed to believe it. They're basically trying to feed you stuff. This is basically the apple that you have here. They feed you stuff. There's terrorism in Egypt. Eat it. President Sisi is going to leave when he wants. Take another bite. All this kind of lies and, there's no other word other than the word BS, but, I can't find any other word for it. But this is essentially what we're seeing here in Egypt. Is it going to change? I say it will change. Regardless of what Osama thinks, or regardless of what Mr. Gamal thinks, things will change, and Mr. Sisi will leave, and the military dictatorship will be toppled, and I look forward to that. Basically, where I can go into Egypt anytime I want, without fear, and being able to express myself freely, and without being have to eating an apple.
Thank you very much. We have one more commentator and then we're going to have to wrap it up, folks. We're running out of time, I'm afraid.
So I have a few questions for the professor. One of the basic precepts of democracy as it's practiced here is the supremacy of the law. That the law should be respected and reign supreme. Is that a tenet to which you subscribe? Okay. Is it a tenet to which Sisi subscribes as well as supremacy of law? The answer is yes. Okay, now, at the time that he was into his presidency for 1 year, and at the time that he was forcefully removed, was there a... I'm sorry, yeah, Morsi. Morsi, yes. Was there a provision in the law which allowed for the lawful removal or early recall of Morsi? Or was there a vacuum in the law on that point? There was no provision in the law.
There was.
Okay, so is it fair to say then that the state of the law as it stood at that time did not allow for a removal prior to the termination of his term? Is that a fair understanding of the law as it stood at that time? Maybe you should speak to the other microphone so that people can also hear. Or did you dismantle it?
So can you hear me? So yes, so in the 2012 constitution, which was approved and designed by the Brotherhood, there was no clear procedure for impeachment or for early removal of the president.
So is it fair to say then that the removal or ouster of Morsi was an extra legal step in that it was beyond what was constitutionally and legally mandated?
I would not say as such, because simply it was not mentioned. So people did not have any legal path to pursue. Like the parliament did not have this power. Okay, the constitutional court did not have this power. So there was no legal process through which people could resort to in order to force him.
Fair enough.
For elections.
Yeah. So would it be fair to have characterized it as a coup?
To characterize it as a coup?
Yes.
No. Because, shall I answer this or?
Please do, please do.
Yes, because like, when we define a coup in political science, a coup, this is an act which is taken by the military generals for self-interest, okay? It's not supported by the people, it's not demanded by the people. In fact, this is the first time in history, it's the first time in modern history where we have the military taking an action against a democratically elected president based on the demand of the majority of the population. So when we teach our students in class, what do you mean by a coup? I have to say them that this is the only coup, or this is the only military action which has been requested, demanded by the majority of the population.
Who determined that the majority of the population actually demanded it? By what measure was it determined?
By what measures?
Yes, sir.
By the number of people in the streets. The number of people in the streets.
But in Tahrir Square?
No, not only in Tahrir Square, all over Egypt. All over Egypt.
But surely to God, the fact that there are even hundreds of thousands of people protesting on any given day, how can that be taken as a measure of the majority will, which must be comprised in what? Are there 90 million people in Egypt?
Yes.
Okay, so even if there are hundreds of thousands of people in the street, how can that be taken as a reliable measure of majority will?
Very good question. Very good question. Let me take it for granted, or let me take it with you, that 50% of Egyptians were against President Morsi, and they asked for his removal from power, and another 50% were supporting President Morsi. That's not the case, or that's not the issue for me. The issue is that Egypt was on the edge of a civil war. Even though we can debate how many Egyptians went to the streets, went to the squares, went to the major urban centers to protest the presidency of Mohamed Morsi, we can debate the numbers. Some people would put it as 30 million, 40 million, 20 million, we can debate this number. But for me as an observer, when I see that society is divided between two camps, that's fine. But when this division reached the point of a bloodshed and a civil war and people being killed in the streets, accusing each other, okay, this is the point where that I can't tolerate to have this sort of bloodshed taking place or continuing. So for me, what the military did in itself was an action which saved Egypt, which saved Egyptians, which saved the 90 million Egyptians. Because the other scenario was immediately a civil war in the streets. Because even before June 30, even before the June 30 uprising, people started to march into the streets, I think 10 or 15 days before the June 30 uprisings. On both camps, there were some clashes in the streets of Cairo, in the streets of Alexandria. And more than 30 people, 30 persons were killed on both sides as a result of these clashes.
A couple of follow-up, if I may.
Yes, please.
May I, Madam Moderator? All right, so let's assume that the division of opinion prior to the coup was 50-50, just
Yes.
hypothetically. Okay?
Yes.
Let's say it was that high. And then, so there's the coup. A little while later, there's an election. And if my friend's intervention is correct, Sisi got elected by a 98.4% majority.
Okay?
Okay? So superficially, you'd think all of a sudden the whole nation got converted. Or the other theory is that it might have been a fraudulent result based on improper scrutineering or improper mechanisms. What do you make of the fact that there was a 98.4% majority, which is unheard of in any kind of...
Very good question.
What's your view, sir?
My simple answer is that the Brotherhood boycotted the elections. So all those who participated in the elections were mainly from the supporters of President Sisi, simply because the Brotherhood did not participate in the elections and they boycotted the voting process.
But is it not the case that the Brotherhood won by the slimmest of majorities the first time, right?
Yes.
So they didn't represent or embody the entire population of Egypt, or even 50% of it. So how could their absence result in a 98.4% majority? I'm still struggling to understand
My
that.
friend, 97% of those who voted in the polling stations, not 97% of all Egyptians.
No, I understand that.
Okay, so we are talking about those who voted actually in the polling stations.
Okay, one last question.
Okay.
Okay, so just simply this. The original address by you had to do with the playing out of the judicial system in Egypt and the process. And my question is simply this. I gather you take the view that the process and the structure of justice, of the judicial system as it's set up in Egypt is fair and just. Do I correctly can I correctly infer that? That the structure itself.
The structure is generally just unfair. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now my follow-up question is, are you also of the belief that the operation of that system, is fair as well, or is there an element of corruption, as your opponent and the other speakers suggested was the case?
So how do you find corruption? How would you define corruption here?
Well, like the telephone call, for example, hundreds of people being sentenced without due process in 20 minutes, biased decisions, not applying the law generally.
Very good.
So the question is, as well as you understand, and if you had to do, I mean, no system is perfect, right? From a scale of 1 to 10, if you had to assign a number to it, to what extent do you believe that the operation of the system, the judicial system, is fair and just, and why?
Okay. From a comprehensive perspective, I would say that the operation of the system is fairly good. Like, I would give it 8 out of 10. But there is one important thing here that we should be all aware of. Okay, we are talking about 15,000 judges functioning in Egypt. So when you talk about the judicial process, the judicial system, we are talking about 15,000 judges. Okay, let me make a very quick comment, and if you could allow me 2 minutes to make this clear. Okay, under President Mubarak, okay, the Egyptian judicial system was the last frontier in the battle against dictatorship, corruption, and authoritarianism in the state. The Egyptian judicial system, or Egyptian courts, okay, disbanded or dismantled the parliament under President Mubarak's rule for 3 times. And the parliament by that time was dominated by his ruling party, the National Democratic Party. Okay, this happened under Mubarak. Okay, second, Egyptian courts ordered Mubarak, or the Egyptian judicial system ordered Mubarak to have a full judicial supervision over parliamentary election. That was in 2005. That was the first time when judges were authorized to supervise elections, to make sure that the election process is fair, just, and comprehensive. Do you know, this was the first time that the Brotherhood was able to gain the largest majority among all opposition forces inside the parliament. Only when Egyptian judges were given the authorization to supervise these elections. Fine, that's the second remark. The third remark, after the revolution, we have approximately 5 elections which took place after the revolution, ranging from 2 referendums and 3 elections, or 4 elections, okay? All these elections were supervised by, guess who? Guess who? By the judiciary, okay? And in the 5 or in the 6 elections, guess who were the winning party? Who were the winner? The Muslim Brotherhood. So Egyptian judges, the Egyptian judiciary supervised the elections which brought the Brotherhood into power in the parliament, in the People's Assembly, which brought them into the Shura Council, which is the upper house of parliament. It brought them into the presidency with the election of President Morsi, and it approved the constitution which was designed by the Brotherhood. This is the work which has been done by the Egyptian judiciary. So when we come now and accuse the Egyptian judiciary of being corrupt or of being unfair, I think this is unacceptable. Because if you are taking this as a standard rule, then we have to accuse the Egyptian judiciary of being corrupt all over the process, which means that the elections which brought Morsi to power were not fair. The elections which brought the Brotherhood to parliament were not fair, if you are taking that direction. But my friend, we can't adopt this selective approach. When the judges make a verdict in my favor, then the court system is fine. When they make a verdict against my interest, so it's corrupt. No, that's not the way we should be advocating the supremacy of law and the supremacy of the judicial system. We should accept whatever the judiciary will say, no matter what is the condition, no matter what is the process. Either we respect our judicial system or we disrespect it. If we disrespect this process, it means that Morsi has no legitimacy. It means that the Brotherhood have no legitimacy because they were brought into power by a corrupt judicial system. One last thing I will just make, and I will finish this remark. Do you know who brought the article which authorized military trials for civilians in Egypt into the Egyptian constitution? Do you know who? For the first time in the history of modern Egypt, that the military trial of civilians were put as a clear article in the constitution, that was done under President Morsi. Not even Mubarak. Imagine that. Not even President Mubarak. When President Mubarak used to refer civilians to military courts, do you know who stood against this practice? The Supreme Constitutional Court. It made it clear that this action is unconstitutional because it's not mentioned in the Constitution. And the Constitution, which was functioning under Mubarak, does not or did not approve the referring of civilians to military trial. When the Brotherhood came, and they claim that they represent the revolution, and they claim that they want a democratic Egypt, for the first time in the history of modern Egypt, that this article was brought into the constitution under President Morsi. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, now, in fairness, Osama would like to make a closing statement as well.
Yeah, I actually have some comments about the answer that my friend Gamal gave you. I will start with the last thing that you've said, that the Muslim Brotherhoods won the 5 consecutive elections that were run in Egypt, including elections and referendums, right? And he said that the judiciary system is what brought them to power. That's not true. What brought them to power and what actually ensured the transparency and the fairness of the election was the pressure of people. Were the people who voted. People won't accept any fraud, won't accept any interference from the executive branch of the power in the election process, and that's why it was fair and transparent. That's one thing. The other thing that what happened during Mubarak, when the Muslim Brotherhood won a majority opposition on the parliament, and that was supervised by the judiciary system as well, there is an incident that happened, and the judiciary system can do nothing about it, is that Mubarak cancelled the rest of the election process. It's only 1/3 of it. So the Muslim Brotherhood, when they won the first round, he cancelled the rest of it, right? So he did cancel. Where I live, we don't have a representative in the parliament for 5 years because the election was cancelled, and because the one who was about to win was a brotherhood by the name of Nasser. Nasser Al-Hafi is a lawyer, a brotherhood lawyer. He won at the first round against a Mubarak party person, and in the second round it was cancelled. And this is Al-Qanatir Khaliya, search it. The city is Al-Qanatir, search it and you'll find it. That's one thing. So what brought the Brotherhood to power is the pressure of people, is the revolution that happened. It's that people won't accept any injustice in the process. So we can't ignore that. But I would also say that not all judges are corrupt, and I didn't mention that by any means. We have independent judges. We have some that they were laid off after the coup, like about 20. They were laid off after the coup. They lost their jobs forever. We have judges who are in prison right now for being independent and refusing to obey the instructions from the Al-Sisi government. So another thing that, like two things about your question to my friend Gamal. So he says we removed Morsi because he came in a democratic process, and the Brotherhood won't accept to run a fair election again. Why? They won 6 elections. How come you judging them by their intention, and you didn't judge the generals by their intention, because the general who removed Morsi is now a president? How come you accepted his intention at the beginning and now he's a president by 99%? I'm sorry, Mohammed, 98%. I'm so sorry. Yeah. So how come you judge them by their intention? That's one thing. The other thing that you say that you teach your students that no revolution happened with popular uprising or protests. This is a textbook. Sorry, no coup, no military coup happens with associated with protests, and that's not true. What you can teach your students about what's happened, the history of Latin America, about Venezuela. How many people? Just go Google it. Search Venezuela coup in 2004. Search it on the YouTube, and you'll see massive number of people are getting down to streets, and a coup happened right away. And this been very textbook happening military coup that take the people protest, people demands as a cover, and that's what General Sisi and their military generals done. They taken it as a cover. So I don't like to just drag that for so long, but yeah, it's fair enough to just to get some reply. Thank you guys for having us here, and thanks for the organizing event, and thank you all guys for being here.
We'd like to thank everyone for coming out today. Unfortunately, we are out of time. We will possibly put on a tune or two for you while we pack up. We'd like to thank our speakers for having the courage to come out on such a hard topic to discuss. I know it's very emotional for a lot of us, and I hope people will go to our site. This video will be posted at speakerscorner.com. Sorry, let's try that again. Facebook, Speakers Corner on Facebook. If you go to Speakers Corner Calgary, you'll find us. Also, if you go to our meetup site, you can be informed of our upcoming stuff, and that is meetup.com/speaker-corner-Calgary. And if anyone wishes me to send them an email to give them this information, they can come up to the stage afterwards, and I'd be happy to have a little discussion with you and take your information. Thank you very much, folks.
Somebody lost their lady by the name, apparently. Yeah, if the driver's license is reliable.
Yeah.
It's Lana and Anybody?
Lana, if you can hear me, we have your wallet. If you come to the gazebo, Lana.